Planning and scoping penetration tests. Penetration testing, or pentesting, is an essential part of a cybersecurity strategy aiming to identify vulnerabilities before attackers do. However, an effective penetration test requires careful planning and scoping to ensure legal, ethical, and technical feasibility. 1. Understanding the purpose of a penetration test. Before conducting a pentest, it is critical to define why the test is being conducted. The purpose could be compliance with regulations like PCI DSS, HIPAA, or GDPR. Testing security before deploying new infrastructure. Identifying vulnerabilities and security risks. Assessing incident response capabilities. The objectives should be clearly documented and agreed upon with stakeholders. 2. Defining the scope of the test. The scope of a penetration test sets the boundaries for testing activities. A well-defined scope ensures that testers only target authorized systems and avoid unintended business disruptions. Key considerations for defining scope include in-scope versus out-of-scope assets. Clearly define which systems, networks, applications, and endpoints will be tested. Testing methodology. Choose between a black box, gray box, or white box approach. Black box. No prior knowledge of the system. Simulates an external hacker. Gray box. Limited knowledge of the system. Simulates an insider attack. White box. Full knowledge of the system. Simulates a security audit. Internal versus external testing. Determine if testing will focus on internal networks, external networks, or cloud services. Live environment versus staging. Decide if the test will be performed in production or a separate test environment. A clear scoping document ensures that both parties understand the limitations and expectations of the engagement. Three. Rules of engagement, ROE, and legal considerations. Rules of engagement, ROE, outline the constraints and conditions of the pentest to protect both the organization and the testers. Key ROE components. Timeframe, when the test will occur, e.g., business hours versus off hours. Allowed testing techniques, define acceptable methodologies, e.g., social engineering, phishing, or physical penetration tests. Data handling, specify how collected data will be stored, transmitted, and deleted. Communication plan, define escalation procedures in case a critical vulnerability is discovered. Third-party services, if testing includes cloud providers, AWS, Azure, GCP, or third-party applications, additional permissions may be required. Additionally, legal documentation is crucial. This includes non-disclosure agreements, NDA, prevents disclosure of sensitive information. Statements of work, SOW, defines deliverables and scope. Master Service Agreements, MSA, governs long-term engagements. Authorization letters, provides legal permission for pentesting. 4. Compliance and regulatory requirements. Certain industries are bound by regulatory standards that impact pentesting activities. Understanding these before scoping the test is crucial. PCI DSS, required for companies handling payment card data. Mandates quarterly. Penetration tests. HIPAA, healthcare organizations must ensure patient data security. PHI protected. Health information must not be accessed during testing. GDPR, EU regulations on data privacy and security, requires explicit consent for penetration testing that involves personal data. NIST 800-115 provides a standard methodology for conducting penetration tests. Failure to consider compliance requirements can lead to legal penalties. 5. Selecting the right penetration testing approach. Pentesters must determine which assessment type best aligns with the organization's needs. Assessment type. Description. Compliance-based ensures regulatory compliance, e.g., PCI DSS, HIPAA. Objective-based. Focuses on specific security goals, e.g., testing endpoint security. Red team testing. Simulates an advanced persistent threat, APT, attack. Blue team testing. Focuses on improving defensive security strategies. Purple team testing collaboration between red and blue teams to improve security. Red team assessments often use frameworks like MITRE ATT and CK, while compliance-based tests align with NIST, OWASP, and PTS methodologies. 6. Threat modeling and risk assessment. To prioritize testing efforts, penetration testers use threat modeling frameworks. STRIDE, spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service. Elevation of privilege, used to categorize security threats. DREAD, damage, reproducibility, exploitability, affected users, discoverability, risk. Assessment model that assigns a numerical risk value. OCTAVE, operationally critical threat, asset, and vulnerability evaluation, focuses on identifying and mitigating organizational risks. Using these frameworks, penetration testers can identify high-risk attack vectors and prioritize testing efforts. 7. Handling scope creep and risk management. Scope creep occurs when new assets or testing requirements emerge after the engagement begins. To avoid issues, clearly document scope in the agreement. Establish a process for modifying the scope if new assets are discovered. Define risk tolerance and business impact. A penetration test could cause downtime, so organizations must decide how much risk they can accept. (8) Deliverables and reporting. Once testing is complete, penetration testers must deliver a comprehensive report. Key sections of a penetration testing report. 1. Executive summary, a high-level overview for business stakeholders. 2. Scope and methodology, a breakdown of what was tested and how. 3. Findings and risk assessment, identified vulnerabilities and their risk ratings. 4. Exploitation results, proof of concept exploits and potential impacts. 5. Remediation recommendations, actionable steps to mitigate vulnerabilities. Reports must be tailored for technical teams, detailed findings, and executives' business impact. Final thoughts. A well-planned and properly scoped penetration test is essential for ensuring security without unnecessary risks or legal complications. By following best practices in scoping, engagement, rules, compliance, and reporting, organizations can maximize the value of their security assessments while minimizing business disruptions.